So just to clarify and make sure everyone understands how to do FEEDCATS, I am making this little video, so hopefully this helps. If not, please feel free to ask more questions so that I may be able to help you. All right, so FEEDCATS is basically an acronym, and it's a way for us to gather our evidence to support a claim that we're making. And the claim that we're making is basically, who do we blame? So who are you blaming, or what are you blaming for the sinking of the Titanic? So up here under each letter in FEEDCATS represents a specific type of evidence. So the F stands for facts, and so for facts, just think about a fact, so something that can be proven. So statements that are true and provable. Examples, that's what the E stands for. Examples are just anything that, or an event, or a thing, or a person that demonstrates your point. So think of an example, like for example here, I'm explaining all of this to you. So an example is just a way to explain something. I know that I've given you like 1, 2, 3, and then I've given you 1 here, and if you scroll on down, I've given you different amounts, I guess, of evidence to include. You can do as many or as few as you need so that you may be able to support your claim. So for example, you don't have to have 3 facts here. If you just have 2, that's fine. Move on. If you think of another one, you can always add. If you have 5 or 6 facts and you want to add all 5 or 6, put it on the back or use a separate piece of paper. All right, moving on. An exaggeration. Well, you all know what an exaggeration is, or at least once I tell you this, you will. So think about a hyperbole. I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. Well, yeah, so you're using a statement to support your key idea, and it doesn't have to be entirely accurate or entirely true. Okay, so you may have to make up part of your exaggeration. However, your exaggeration must make sense. So it can't be like way off in left field and have nothing to do with the Titanic or what happened. So think back to the different stations that you visited last week. If you can't remember, you can always pull them up on our website and piece some of those pieces of evidence and those things that you read, piece it together, and you can come up with an exaggeration. Exaggerations tend to be the hardest, as well as like an anecdote. So if you can't think of an exaggeration, skip it, come back to it. Some people find the exaggeration to be super easy, and then maybe something else to be a little bit harder. So ask a friend. They may be able to help you come up with something or think of something, or at least give you an example of what they came up with. Details, they're just specific things that kind of highlight your main point. It makes your key point or your main point more clear, and it shows kind of how things fit together. So like details in a story, right? All right, cause and effect, and I've given you a sentence starter here, but you do not have to use it. There's actually 2, but for example, you guys are familiar with cause and effect. It's a statement that illustrates how one detail will affect another detail, or not really a detail, but an outcome or happening. Or you could do like a compare and contrast. So a statement that relates to the idea or something else, like saying it is like this or it's not like this. So compare and contrast, think simile, metaphor. Anecdote, remember that's a fancy word for a story. It's when you explain something, you give more personal information to support your main idea. And then another one that students sometimes have trouble with is a testimony, and then other students are like, oh my gosh, I got this. So if you're struggling, then, cut yourself some slack. This is one, like remember I said in class, you can skip 1 or 2 of these FEEDCATS if you can't think of something, and maybe it will come to you. All right, so a testimony is a personal statement from someone that tells how they were affected. So, for example, you could pretend that you talked to a survivor, or you remember in some of the station activities, actually people from the ship, from the boat, from the Titanic, they gave testimony. So you can use some of that. Go back, if you didn't write it down or you didn't put it word for word, go back and pull those documents up from our website. Also, testimony, typically, if this was something that, a real essay that we were writing, to be published, legitimately published somewhere, we would not make up testimony. But in this case, yes, we are turning this in for class, and it's kind of like a fun activity, a writing activity. So if you need to kind of, make up something here, you can, but please know that typically testimony is not made up, okay? So testimony is usually, something that we talk to someone and we get their actual account, but we can't do that in this case, obviously, unless you have special powers. Do you have special powers? Maybe you have special powers that I'm not aware of. All right, and then lastly, statistics. This also fits with one of our Latin words, such as a fact that is often stated, and you give some type of numerical data. 90% of people who work out every day live longer. I just made that up, but usually a statistic is factual based, and here you may have to, do some research. I know there were some statistics given in the station work. There was plenty of opportunities for you to come up with some numbers and do some number crunching. So I hope this helps. If it doesn't, please feel free to ask more questions. You can email me like some of you have, or I opened it up on Remind to where you can actually ask me questions since we're out of school.